The most powerful message Queen Elizabeth ever left behind was never shouted from a palace balcony, never delivered in one of her famous Christmas speeches, and never written into a public royal order. It was something much quieter, almost hidden, private, sealed away, and deeply personal. Yet this silent decision may reveal more about the future of the British royal family than anything she said during her incredible 70-year reign. When Queen Elizabeth passed away at Balmoral in September 2022, the world was locked onto the grand ceremony. The booming gun salutes, the endless line of people waiting in London to pay their respects, the slow emotional procession moving through historic streets. Cameras captured every second of the royal tradition. But while the public watched those powerful moments, something far more personal was happening quietly behind palace walls. A private will, a deeply personal decision, a choice that didn't need approval from Parliament, public opinion, or royal strategy. And in that choice, she selected Lady Louise Windsor. Not the future king, not the Queen Consort, not one of the most senior working royals who usually stand at the center of royal attention. Lady Louise. At first glance, the inheritance might sound simple. Just a cottage sitting peacefully inside the Balmoral estate, resting in the wild beauty of the Scottish Highlands, forests stretching for miles, wide moorland, open skies, and calm silence all around. But Balmoral is not just another royal residence. It is not owned by the crown, and it does not belong to the government. This estate has been privately owned by the monarch ever since Queen Victoria and Prince Albert bought it back in 1852. That single detail changes everything. Balmoral was Elizabeth's escape from royal pressure. It was the place she went to breathe, to relax, and to ride horses freely across the land she loved. At Balmoral, Queen Elizabeth could walk her dogs without ceremony, without cameras, without royal pressure hanging over every step. It was the rare place where she didn't have to stand as the sovereign of a nation. There, she could simply be a wife, a mother, and a grandmother. The crown felt lighter in those quiet hills. The monarchy itself seemed to soften and turn into something more human, more like family. And in a deeply emotional twist of fate, Balmoral is also where she took her final breath. Giving a piece of Balmoral to someone is not some casual royal favor. It is not like handing out ribbons at a public event or making a polite gesture for tradition. This kind of decision runs deep. Balmoral was her refuge, her escape from the weight of the crown. You do not split your sanctuary unless you are absolutely certain about who deserves to be part of it. That is exactly why this story carries so much weight. This was not about shifting titles or adjusting royal protocol. It was not some clever constitutional move. It was a quiet personal decision. And sometimes the most private choices speak louder than the biggest public announcements. Lady Louise Windsor has never chased headlines or royal drama. Born prematurely in November 2003 and weighing just 4 pounds, her arrival into the world was delicate and uncertain. From the very start, her life stayed calm and carefully protected. She grew up away from constant media attention under the steady guidance of Prince Edward and Sophie, who intentionally built their family life outside the chaos that often surrounds the senior royals. When Louise had the option to be styled as Her Royal Highness Princess Louise, she did not push for it or turn it into a public moment. Instead, she became Lady Louise, a quiet choice that spoke volumes. She picked discretion over status, calm over spotlight. In a royal institution where even the smallest move can explode into headlines, that kind of restraint stands out. And inside a family that has faced explosive interviews revealing memoirs, public complaints, and very visible fractures, silence can carry serious weight. Loyalty carries weight. Restraint carries weight. And Queen Elizabeth understood that kind of weight better than almost anyone on the planet. In her later years, she watched the monarchy face intense pressure from every direction. Relationships inside the family started cracking. Trust was tested in public view. Headlines shifted fast, and the royal narrative could flip overnight. But through all of that chaos, one person stayed calm and steady. Louise. No interviews chasing attention, no public complaints, no flashy business deals or commercial moves, just her studies, her family, and a quiet respect for the traditions her grandfather, Prince Philip, loved so much. When Prince Philip passed away in April 2021, one of the most unforgettable moments was not a speech, not a grand tribute, but something much more personal. A carriage. 17-year-old Louise stepped forward and drove the Duke of Edinburgh's carriage as a tribute. She didn't do it for spectacle or headlines. She did it because he had personally taught her how to drive it, because it meant something to him, because she refused to let his seat sit empty on such an emotional day. That powerful image stayed in people's minds, and Queen Elizabeth saw it too. In the United Kingdom, a monarch's will is sealed for decades. Senior royal wills stay private to protect the dignity of the institution. The public will never read those pages. We will never see the signatures or the exact words written down. But throughout her entire reign, Elizabeth had another way of sending messages. She communicated through actions, through invitations, through quiet gestures, through who stood closest to her when the moment truly mattered. And in the end, she left a piece of her most treasured place to Louise. Then something unexpected added a whole new layer to the story. After Queen Elizabeth passed away, the Balmoral estate officially moved under the control of King Charles. Authority shifted, power shifted. The responsibility for one of the royal family's most treasured places suddenly rested in new hands. But according to sources, something important happened behind the scenes. Prince William reportedly made sure that Lady Louise's inheritance moved forward smoothly, without drama or resistance. That detail carries serious meaning. William is not just a supportive cousin trying to keep family peace, he is the future king. Every move he makes now quietly reveals the kind of monarchy he plans to lead one day. When he chooses to protect someone who has stayed loyal, someone who avoids noise and respects royal tradition, it sends a message. It shows what kind of people may stand closer to the center of the royal circle in the years ahead. And the truth is, not everyone appears to be part of that circle anymore. That is why this small cottage in Scotland is not just a cottage. It becomes something bigger, a signal, a placement inside the royal story. A quiet message about who reflects the values Queen Elizabeth protected for more than 70 years. The will itself may stay sealed for 90 years, locked away from the public eye. We may never read the exact words written inside, but the choice became visible the moment it happened. And inside the monarchy, silence can sometimes speak louder than any speech ever could. To really understand why this inheritance carries so much emotional weight, you have to look at Balmoral differently. Not as a postcard castle sitting in the Scottish Highlands, but as the one place where Queen Elizabeth was not completely the queen. Balmoral Castle sits in Aberdeenshire, surrounded by nearly 50,000 acres of raw, rugged landscape. Heather-covered moorland stretches across the hills. Tall pine forests stand quietly in the distance. Cold, clear rivers cut through the land like silver ribbons. It is stunning, no doubt about that. But more importantly, it is private. And in the life of a monarch, true privacy is rarer than the crown jewels. Unlike Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, Balmoral has never belonged to the state. It was privately purchased back in 1852 by Queen Victoria and Prince Albert using their own personal money. That one detail changes the entire story. Balmoral has always existed outside the machinery of government. It is not tied to parliamentary budgets, and it is not controlled by constitutional rules or political symbolism. It is something much more personal. Balmoral is family property. For Queen Elizabeth, Balmoral meant freedom. Every summer, the royal family would retreat there, stepping away from the intense pressure of public life. Official schedules slowed down. Public engagements became fewer. The strict formal energy of palace life simply faded into the background. At Balmoral, the queen often wore simple headscarves and sturdy boots instead of glittering tiaras. She walked her dogs across open land without ceremony. She drove herself down long gravel roads with no royal convoy trailing behind. Instead of grand state banquets and formal palace dinners, Balmoral was known for relaxed barbecues and casual family meals. It was the closest the monarchy ever came to something resembling ordinary life. That is exactly why the place where she passed away in September 2022 felt almost poetic. She did not leave this world inside the center of royal power. She passed away inside the place where she felt most at peace, her sanctuary. Now think about this for a moment. If you had one place on earth where you could step away from duty and simply exist as yourself, who would you trust with a piece of it? A political ally? A strategic public figure? Or someone who truly reflected the values that place represented? Balmoral was never about royal hierarchy. It was always about belonging. Over the years, royal watchers began noticing quiet patterns, who received frequent invitations, who stayed longer during visits, who appeared in those relaxed photographs walking beside the queen along the estate's peaceful paths. Balmoral revealed relationships without the need for public statements or official announcements. And in her later years, Prince Edward and Sophie were often among the family members closest to her there. Their visits to Balmoral were steady, calm, and mostly out of the public eye. No drama, no headlines, no constant press attention. Prince Edward and Sophie simply showed up as family. Their children, including Lady Louise, grew up knowing Balmoral not as some royal spectacle, but as something familiar and personal. Louise did not arrive there as a public figure trying to impress anyone. She arrived as a granddaughter spending time with her grandparents. And that difference matters more than people realize. Inside the gates of Balmoral, the monarchy begins to shed its layers. Titles soften, formal rules loosen. The heavy weight of protocol fades into the background. What truly remains is character. Queen Elizabeth valued discretion. She respected consistency, and she trusted people who never tried to use their closeness to the crown for personal advantage. Balmoral quietly became the place where those qualities revealed themselves. When Prince Philip was alive, he and Elizabeth spent long stretches of time there together. It was the place where he fully enjoyed his passion for carriage, driving across the wide-open land. It was also where he personally designed improvements around the estate and stepped away from the stiff expectations of palace life. After his passing in April 2021, Balmoral seemed to grow even quieter and more reflective. The atmosphere felt more personal, more filled with memory. Lady Louise's connection to Prince Philip through carriage driving was not some staged royal moment. It was something he personally taught her right there on that land. Hours spent practicing, conversations away from cameras, long stretches of shared silence that meant everything. That is why a cottage inside the Balmoral estate is not just another piece of property. It represents entry into a deeply personal circle of memory and trust. The Balmoral grounds hold several residences. Cregewin Lodge has historically been used by members of the royal family before the main summer season begins. Smaller cottages sit quietly across the estate as well, offering space for relatives and trusted guests. Each one is close enough to the castle for family connection, but far enough away to give privacy and breathing room. To grant someone one of these Balmoral properties is a powerful message. It quietly says, you are part of the inner circle. It is easy for outsiders to overlook this kind of gesture because it comes with no spectacle. There was no televised announcement, no dramatic palace balcony moment, no formal royal ceremony. But in royal life, the quiet decisions often reveal far more than the public events everyone watches. And there is another layer to this story that makes it even more interesting. When Queen Elizabeth passed away, her private estate transferred legally to King Charles. That meant Balmoral, as property, shifted into his hands. Ownership changed on paper, but the emotional structure of Balmoral remained deeply connected to Elizabeth and the life she built there. For any of her personal wishes to continue smoothly, senior members of the family needed to respect that direction. That is where this inheritance becomes something bigger than a sentimental gift. It becomes structural. Balmoral is more than beautiful land in Scotland. It represents continuity for the monarchy. The British royal system survives not only through laws and constitutional rules, but through carefully maintained unity within the family itself. Who gathers at Balmoral matters. Who receives invitations matters. Those quiet signals reveal who is trusted and who may help shape the future tone of the institution. In recent years, the monarchy has faced very visible tension. Public interviews revealing memoirs, legal disputes, and non-stop reputation management have created waves of pressure. Yet Balmoral has remained one of the few places untouched by that kind of public narrative, a calm center during uncertain times. Placing Lady Louise within that environment sends a quiet message about stability. And in a modern constitutional monarchy navigating constant scrutiny, stability has become incredibly valuable. There is also deep symbolism in the generational story tied to the estate. Queen Victoria purchased Balmoral. Queen Elizabeth carefully preserved it. Now King Charles holds responsibility for it. Each generation leaves its mark on the place and reflects its values through how it is used. So if Elizabeth chose to place Louise within that continuing story, it suggests she saw something in her that matched the tradition and character of that royal line. Not loud ambition, not calculated alliances, just steadiness. That may be the quiet truth sitting beneath this entire inheritance story. Balmoral has never been the place where the monarchy performs for cameras. It is the place where the royal family remembers who they are when the spotlight disappears. To receive a piece of that world is a quiet message that does not need headlines or ceremonies. It simply says, you belong here. And inside a family shaped by both enormous privilege and intense pressure, true belonging may be the rarest gift of all. If Balmoral represents belonging, then Lady Louise Windsor reflects the kind of quiet belonging Queen Elizabeth carefully valued. To really understand why this inheritance carries emotional weight, you have to look past the property itself and focus on character. Inside royal families, character is often revealed not through dramatic public gestures, but through something much quieter, the absence of noise. Lady Louise Alice Elizabeth Mary Mountbatten Windsor was born in November 2003, arriving 8 weeks prematurely. Her birth was not surrounded by royal celebration or grand public excitement. Instead, it was a serious medical moment. She was delivered by cesarean section at Frimley Park Hospital and weighed just 4 pounds. For several hours, there was uncertainty about how things would unfold. The palace did not rush out triumphant announcements or dramatic statements. Instead, updates were careful and measured. Both mother and child needed stability before anything else. That beginning matters more than many people realize. Louise's life did not start with fanfare or royal spotlight. It began with fragility and careful protection. Within her first year, she underwent surgery to correct esotropia, a condition where one eye turns inward. The operation was delicate and necessary, but it was handled quietly and respectfully. There were no media tours, no staged photo opportunities designed to generate public sympathy. From the very start, her life was protected rather than promoted. Her parents, Prince Edward and Sophie, made a very deliberate choice to build their family life away from the intense glare that surrounds the direct heirs to the throne. Edward, the youngest brother of King Charles, has long carried a reputation for being calm, reliable, and understated. Not flashy, not dramatic, just steady. And that same steady energy shaped the environment where Lady Louise grew up. Sophie, especially during the later years of Queen Elizabeth's life, became one of the monarch's closest and most trusted confidantes. Their relationship was quiet but incredibly strong. Because of that bond, their family rhythm stayed calm and consistent. Low-profile royal engagements, strong loyalty inside the family, and almost no public controversy. Lady Louise grew up inside that steady environment, far removed from the drama that sometimes surrounds the royal spotlight. When she became eligible to use the title Her Royal Highness Princess Louise, she did not step forward to claim it publicly. Instead, she continued as Lady Louise. It was not a dramatic statement or a bold rejection of royal tradition. It was simply the same quiet path she had always followed. No sudden elevation, no attempt to reposition herself in the royal hierarchy. In a system where titles bring attention and influence, choosing restraint like that is far from insignificant. She attended school without turning herself into a public celebrity. She has never built a flashy public image online and does not run official social media accounts. She has never rushed to give interviews explaining her personal story. When she appears at major royal events, she does not create spectacle. She simply stands composed, observant, and respectful of the moment. For Queen Elizabeth, who spent a lifetime balancing a powerful public role with a carefully protected private self, that kind of composure would not have gone unnoticed. But perhaps the most revealing side of Louise's character appeared in her relationship with Prince Philip. The Duke of Edinburgh was known for being direct, disciplined, and not easily impressed. He had little patience for empty performance or showmanship without real substance. In his later years, he devoted serious time to carriage driving, a sport that demands focus, control, and calm decision-making under pressure. He personally taught Louise how to do it. Those lessons were not symbolic royal gestures. They were real hours spent out on the Balmoral land, learning how to handle the reins properly, understanding the horses, reading the rough terrain, and staying steady through every turn. Carriage driving was never glamorous work. It demanded patience, focus, and long hours of practice. There were no cheering crowds or flashing cameras out on those Balmoral paths. Just concentration, steady hands, and respect for the discipline Prince Philip valued so much. When Prince Philip passed away in April 2021, the entire world watched a funeral unlike any other. Pandemic restrictions meant the ceremony had to be carefully controlled. Family members were spaced apart, traditions were simplified, the usual royal pageantry was stripped down to something quieter and more restrained. Yet in the middle of that solemn moment, one powerful image stood out. Lady Louise driving Prince Philip's carriage as part of the tribute procession. She was only 17. She did not step forward with a speech. She did not try to capture attention. Instead, she honored him in the exact language he had taught her, through action, through the skill he spent hours teaching her on the Balmoral grounds. That single moment captured something deeply important about loyalty. In a monarchy that has experienced very public tensions in recent years, loyalty is not just a word. It is something measured over time. The royal family has faced revealing interviews that pushed private conversations into global headlines, memoirs that described internal disagreements, legal disputes that exposed painful fractures inside the institution. Each moment chipped away at the sense of unity that once defined the royal image. Yet through all of that noise, Louise remained unchanged. She did not jump into public debates. She did not counterattack or try to gain sympathy from the situation. She simply continued with her life and her studies. Eventually, she enrolled at the University of St. Andrews, the same university where Prince William first met Catherine. It was a subtle decision, but one that quietly aligned with royal continuity rather than disruption. Queen Elizabeth valued continuity above almost everything else during her 70-year reign. The signals she sent were rarely loud, but they were always meaningful. Invitations to Balmoral were never random. Seating arrangements at important services were carefully considered. Jewelry gifts carried history. Even simple presents could signal trust. And Lady Louise was present, not at the center of royal strategy or political maneuvering, not dominating headlines, but present in the quiet spaces that mattered most to Queen Elizabeth personally. When Harry and Meghan stepped back from senior royal duties in early 2020, the monarchy suddenly entered a moment of serious recollaboration. Roles had to shift, responsibilities had to be redistributed. The institution needed stability while the world watched closely. During that moment, Prince Edward and Sophie quietly stepped forward. No dramatic announcements, no public complaints, they simply began taking on more royal duties. Their reliability became more visible, and with that visibility came something important. closer proximity to Queen Elizabeth herself. Lady Louise was naturally part of that family orbit. It can be tempting to look at an inheritance like this and assume it is simply favoritism, but inside royal dynamics, these decisions often reflect something deeper. They reflect shared values. Queen Elizabeth's entire world was built on duty, restraint, and an almost unbreakable commitment to discretion. She rarely revealed her personal emotions in public. Instead, she communicated through gestures and quiet signals. So if she chose to leave part of her most treasured estate to Louise, it likely reflected recognition. Not recognition of ambition, not recognition of political strategy, but recognition of character that aligned closely with her own. There is also a powerful generational layer to consider. Louise represents a branch of the royal family that has largely remained outside major controversy. She is not tied to scandal, she is not at the center of succession tension, and she is not pulled into the public polarization that has surrounded other royal figures in recent years. Instead, she exists in a unique position, slightly adjacent to the throne yet still fully woven into the fabric of the royal family. That position carries a certain advantage. It offers flexibility without disrupting the hierarchy that keeps the monarchy stable. For Queen Elizabeth, who spent a lifetime carefully balancing tradition and change, that kind of stability would have mattered enormously. Louise is not loud. She does not create division. She does not test the boundaries of the institution in public. And inside a royal family where constant visibility can sometimes create fractures, quiet steadiness becomes incredibly valuable. Queen Elizabeth spent 70 years protecting the monarchy through careful, controlled evolution. She modernized the institution when needed, but never allowed it to lose its core identity. And in Lady Louise, she may have seen someone capable of protecting that delicate balance in the future. Not someone chasing headlines or dominating the news cycle, but someone preserving the tone of the institution. Because in the language of royal legacy, tone is everything. If Queen Elizabeth's decision revealed her private values, then Prince William's response revealed something just as important: the direction the monarchy may be heading in the future. When Elizabeth passed away in September 2022, a constitutional shift happened instantly. Balmoral, as part of her personal estate, transferred directly to King Charles. Ownership changed, authority moved into new hands. On paper, the transition looked smooth and automatic, but inside a royal dynasty, paperwork only tells half the story. Because inheritance in a royal family is never just legal, it is relational. It depends on trust, respect, and agreement among the people at the top of the institution. For Lady Louise to retain a cottage within the Balmoral estate under a new reign, there needed to be quiet alignment among senior members of the family. King Charles now held legal control of the estate. Decisions about its use, maintenance, and access ultimately rested with him. Yet palace reporting has suggested that Prince William took a personal interest in making sure Louise's position remained secure. And that detail is worth paying attention to. William is not simply a supportive cousin looking out for family harmony. He is the Prince of Wales, the future king. Every move he makes today is viewed as a preview of how he may lead one day. His alliances hint at the structure of the monarchy he wants to build. His priorities quietly shape the tone of the institution long before the crown ever reaches him. So why step in here? Part of the answer may come from William's own life experience. He has seen firsthand how fragile royal unity can become under pressure. He grew up watching his parents' marriage collapse in full public view. The media examined every detail of that painful chapter. And years later, he experienced a different kind of rupture, when his brother chose a life outside the royal framework. Regardless of how people interpret Prince Harry's choices, the outcome created undeniable distance. Trust was strained, relationships shifted, and the structure of the modern monarchy had to adjust quickly. Prince William understands something many people overlook. He knows what can happen when younger members of the royal family begin to feel unsupported or disconnected from the institution. History has shown how quickly those situations can grow into serious fractures. Lady Louise represents the complete opposite path. She has never distanced herself from the monarchy. She has never publicly criticized the institution. She has never tried to turn her royal connection into personal business opportunities. Instead, she has remained steady, respectful, and incredibly discreet. In many ways, she represents the quieter branch of the royal family. The side that continues working, supporting, and showing up without constant headlines or public conflict. So when Prince William reportedly helped ensure that Louise's inheritance moved forward without obstacles, the gesture carried deeper meaning. It was not just about respecting Queen Elizabeth's final wishes. It also reinforced a quiet principle inside the royal structure: loyalty will be supported. That principle matters because William's generation will ultimately shape the monarchy's next chapter. The institution now operates in a world very different from the one Queen Elizabeth entered decades ago. Public transparency is higher. Traditional deference has weakened, and stories now travel across the world at digital speed. The monarchy no longer lives in an era where silence alone protects its image. To remain stable, it needs figures who calm situations rather than intensify them. People who bring steadiness rather than controversy. Lady Louise fits that profile almost perfectly. There is also a wider context shaping these dynamics. In February 2024, Buckingham Palace announced that King Charles had been diagnosed with cancer following treatment related to an enlarged prostate. The palace did not publicly disclose the exact type of cancer, but the message was clear. The king would continue treatment while adjusting his schedule. That announcement immediately increased the sense that a generational transition was slowly approaching. Prince William stepped forward more visibly. His public role expanded, state duties increased, diplomatic appearances became more frequent. He began functioning not just as the heir waiting in the background, but as a visible stabilizing figure within the institution. When a reigning monarch faces health uncertainty, internal royal dynamics often sharpen. Trust becomes extremely valuable. In that kind of environment, William's support for certain family members can reveal how he may be shaping a future inner circle, and that circle appears to be defined less by birth order and more by reliability. Prince Edward and Sophie, now the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, have gradually taken on larger roles inside the monarchy, and they have done it with very little controversy or drama. Their approach fits closely with Prince William's emerging leadership style. Low drama, strong discipline, carefully controlled messaging. They show up, do the work, and avoid unnecessary attention. That steady presence naturally places their family inside a trusted circle around the future king, and as their daughter, Lady Louise, sits comfortably within that reliable perimeter. Now compare that with other royal figures whose roles have changed dramatically in recent years. Prince Andrew stepped away from official public duties after major public criticism connected to his association with Jeffrey Epstein and a widely criticized interview. As a result, he no longer holds a working role within the royal structure. Prince Harry now lives in California, outside the day-to-day framework of the monarchy. After stepping back from senior royal duties and later publishing personal accounts that discussed internal tensions, the distance between him and the royal institution became more visible. These developments did not just reduce the number of working royals, they shifted the internal balance of the entire family. So when Prince William reportedly helped ensure that Lady Louise's Balmoral inheritance moved forward smoothly, the move may reflect something larger. It suggests support for the branch of the family that remains steady during difficult moments. This is not simply about favoritism. It is about continuity management. A future king must look beyond simple bloodline proximity. He has to consider which family members strengthen the stability and unity of the institution itself. In a modern monarchy, public perception can carry as much influence as official protocol. Standing beside steady, reliable figures sends a clear signal of reassurance. There is also a deeply symbolic layer to this story. Balmoral is not just land in Scotland. It was Queen Elizabeth's personal refuge. The estate carries enormous emotional meaning within the royal family. By supporting Louise's place there, William also signals respect for his grandmother's private wishes, and in doing so, he ties himself directly to her legacy, not just through ceremony, but through action. A quiet message that the values Elizabeth protected throughout her reign will continue to matter. Those values, discretion, restraint, and loyalty, have not always appeared evenly across the wider royal family. Some people may interpret decisions like this as exclusion, but the reality is that modern monarchies often become smaller and more focused over time. As institutions evolve, the circle naturally tightens around those considered most reliable. Modern pressures on the monarchy are stronger than ever. Public funding scrutiny, constant media attention, and generational change are forcing the institution to operate with a much tighter core. The days of a large royal circle filled with loosely defined roles are slowly fading away. Prince William seems to understand this reality very clearly. The model he appears to be shaping looks leaner, more focused, and carefully controlled. Fewer central figures, stronger trust, less room for chaos. Within that structure, Lady Louise's protected place at Balmoral makes sense. She is not being pushed to the margins. Instead, she sits quietly within the architecture of stability William seems to favor. There is also an interesting layer of mentorship involved. William is only a few years older than Louise, which places them in a similar generation of the royal family. That overlap creates a different kind of relationship. He is not just a future king observing from above, he can also act as a near-peer guide. By helping ensure her place within the Balmoral estate remains secure, he strengthens the foundation beneath a younger royal, who may one day carry greater visibility. It is a quiet investment in stability for the future. William has lived through royal fractures. He watched painful family divisions unfold in public view. Now his actions suggest he may be trying to build the opposite, cohesion. The monarchy is often explained through formal language, succession, regency, crown property, constitutional structure, but beneath those official systems lies a quieter reality, the network of trust. Who gets invited into private spaces? Who is defended when pressure rises? Who is quietly prioritized when decisions are made? William's involvement in this inheritance appears less about property boundaries and more about those invisible trust lines, and he seems to be drawing those lines very carefully. Not everyone, it seems, falls inside that circle. If William's actions hint at the monarchy's future direction, then Queen Camilla's position reveals something equally important about the monarchy's present complexity. To understand why the inheritance to Lady Louise carries emotional weight, it is important to look not only at who was chosen, but also at who was not placed at the center of that decision. Queen Camilla, as Queen Consort, stands beside King Charles in every official sense. She attends state visits. She represents the crown at major engagements. Her role is fully recognized within the constitutional structure, yet the monarchy has always functioned along two parallel tracks: the formal structure everyone sees, and the emotional structure that quietly shapes relationships behind the scenes. Formally speaking, Queen Camilla's position within the monarchy is secure. She stands beside King Charles as Queen Consort, representing the crown at major events and state occasions. But emotionally, her place within the royal story has always been far more complicated. Her relationship with Charles began long before the public ever saw them as a couple. The two first connected in the early 1970s, years before Charles married Diana Spencer in 1981. That early history would later become one of the most heavily examined chapters in modern royal life. The marriage between Charles and Diana eventually fractured in full public view. Their separation and later divorce became global headlines. But one moment in particular reshaped how millions of people saw the situation. In 1995, Diana gave a television interview that stunned the world. During that broadcast, she famously stated that there were 3 people in this marriage. More than 20 million viewers in the United Kingdom watched that moment unfold. The impact on Charles's public image was immediate and powerful. From that point forward, Camilla's presence in the story became permanently tied to the turmoil surrounding the royal marriage. When Charles and Camilla finally married in April 2005, the ceremony itself reflected how sensitive the situation still was. It was held as a civil ceremony at Windsor Guildhall rather than a traditional church wedding. Even more notable, Queen Elizabeth did not attend the ceremony itself, although she did host a reception afterward at Windsor Castle. Official explanations pointed to constitutional roles and church considerations. Still, the optics created lasting discussion. The sovereign was present for the celebration, but absent for the vows. And inside the monarchy, optics often carry enormous meaning. For years after that marriage, public conversation continued about what Camilla's future title would eventually be. Early communication from royal officials suggested she might be known as Princess Consort when Charles became king. The idea was seen as a way to soften lingering public resistance. The title Queen Consort carries deep historical weight. It required not only formal acceptance but also emotional acceptance from the public and from within the royal family itself. Then in February 2022, during the Platinum Jubilee celebrating 70 years of Queen Elizabeth's reign, everything shifted. In a carefully written message, the Queen expressed her sincere wish that Camilla would be known as Queen Consort when Charles became king. With that single statement, Elizabeth quietly settled a question that had lingered for decades. The announcement from Queen Elizabeth was careful, measured, and dignified, but it was also undeniably strategic. The wording did not explode with emotion or dramatic enthusiasm. Instead, the language felt deliberate and almost legal in tone. Every word seemed chosen with precision. That difference between duty and personal affection is subtle, but extremely important. Queen Elizabeth spent her entire reign mastering the art of separating private feelings from institutional responsibility. She understood compromise. She understood political reality. By publicly supporting Camilla's future title as Queen Consort, Elizabeth helped stabilize Charles's future reign. The decision removed uncertainty. It prevented long debates during the moment of succession. It was a move designed to protect the continuity of the monarchy. But a monarch's private will exists in a completely different world. A will is not debated in Parliament. It is not adjusted to manage headlines or public opinion. It reflects something far more personal, individual judgment. So when Elizabeth chose to leave a cherished part of Balmoral to Lady Louise instead of redistributing private assets in a way that centered the Queen Consort, the gesture naturally invites interpretation. Not necessarily as rejection, but as prioritization. Because Balmoral was never about constitutional rank or official titles, it was about emotional trust. By most public accounts, Camilla and Queen Elizabeth built a respectful and stable relationship over the years. In the later stages of Elizabeth's life, their interactions appeared cordial and supportive during official engagements. Photographs often showed a calm and cooperative dynamic, yet public harmony does not always equal private intimacy. Inside families, there is often a quiet difference between acceptance and true belonging. Belonging in Elizabeth's world was built slowly. It came through decades of loyalty, quiet service, and an instinctive understanding of the monarchy's tone and rhythm. Camilla's path into the royal family was far more turbulent. Her story carried years of public skepticism and intense media scrutiny. Even as her image gradually improved through consistent work and dedication, the memory of earlier controversies never fully disappeared from public consciousness. And within institutions shaped by history and tradition, those memories can linger for a very long time. Queen Elizabeth lived through the intense strain surrounding the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage. That chapter placed enormous pressure on the royal family and on the monarchy itself. Even decades later, the memory of that period never completely disappeared from public discussion. Elizabeth would have carried that history with her, not necessarily with resentment, but with awareness, and awareness often shapes the quiet decisions leaders make when thinking about legacy. Seen through that lens, the inheritance to Lady Louise can be interpreted as recognition of a different branch of the royal family, one that has remained largely untouched by past controversy, one defined more by quiet discretion than public conflict. In that sense, the gesture may signal where a certain kind of emotional continuity exists. It does not take anything away from Queen Camilla's official role. She remains the queen consort and holds a clear constitutional position beside King Charles, but emotionally, the center of Balmoral may be connected more strongly to another part of the family. There is also a generational factor shaping these dynamics. Camilla's identity within the monarchy is closely tied to King Charles. Her role and influence rise alongside his reign. Their partnership forms the foundation of her position within the institution. But when Prince William eventually becomes king, Camilla's status will shift to Queen Dowager. That transition naturally reduces formal authority and changes her proximity to royal decision-making. At the same time, William's circle of trusted figures appears to be forming around people like Prince Edward, Sophie, and possibly members of their generation, including Lady Louise. If that pattern continues, Camilla's long-term influence could depend more on personal relationships than on official structure, and those relationships have always been complex. Prince William's connection to the memory of his mother Diana has been widely discussed for many years. While he has maintained respectful public interactions with Camilla, the emotional landscape surrounding those family histories remains layered. Time can soften many tensions, but history rarely disappears completely. In that context, Elizabeth's private decision gains another layer of meaning. By tying a piece of Balmoral to Lady Louise, she reinforced a branch of the family that exists outside earlier controversy. It quietly anchors part of the estate's emotional future in stability rather than past conflict. Monarchies operate on symbolism just as much as law. When Elizabeth expressed her wish during the Platinum Jubilee that Camilla become queen consort, she did so publicly and deliberately. That message was meant for the world to hear. When Queen Elizabeth publicly supported Camilla's future title, she did it in full view of the world. The message was clear, deliberate, and designed to protect the stability of the monarchy. Public endorsement can calm institutions and remove uncertainty during moments of transition. But when Elizabeth arranged her private estate, she moved very differently. That process happened quietly. No announcements, no speeches, just personal decisions made behind closed doors. And that difference matters. A public endorsement secures institutional stability. A private inheritance reveals something deeper, personal gravity. Queen Camilla remains an important figure within King Charles's reign. She carries out royal duties consistently. Her charitable work and public engagements contribute to the monarchy's presence and outreach. Yet the story surrounding the Balmoral inheritance quietly draws an emotional boundary. It suggests that while Camilla stands beside the throne in the formal structure of monarchy, she may not occupy the emotional center of Balmoral's history and memory. That distinction is not dramatic or explosive. It is subtle, but in the language of royal institutions, subtle differences can carry enormous weight. Because monarchy has never been only about crowns, palaces, and titles. It is also about something far more private, who is trusted with the spaces where the crown is finally set down. Balmoral was one of those spaces for Queen Elizabeth. It was where the monarch could step away from ceremony and simply exist as a person. And in her final private gesture, that trust appears to have been placed somewhere very specific. At first glance, a cottage might seem like a small inheritance on paper, but the shift it represents is far more significant than the property itself. Because what we may be witnessing here is not simply the distribution of private land, it reflects something deeper, the quiet organization of emotional influence inside one of the oldest institutions in the world. Every monarchy operates through two systems at the same time. The first system is visible to everyone. Titles, succession, constitutional law, public funding, ceremonial hierarchy. The second system is invisible, but just as powerful. Trust, access, proximity, emotional legitimacy within the family itself. Queen Elizabeth spent more than 70 years balancing those two worlds with extraordinary precision. She understood that the crown survives not only through law but through tone, through carefully managing who feels included and who slowly moves to the edges. Now that balance is shifting again. King Charles reigns today, but his reign began under intense scrutiny and personal challenges that few monarchs have faced at the very start of their rule. In February 2024, Buckingham Palace confirmed that King Charles had been diagnosed with cancer. The announcement immediately drew global attention. While the king has continued carrying out royal duties, his schedule has been carefully managed. Public appearances shift depending on treatment and recovery, and the situation remains closely monitored. That reality has quietly accelerated the sense that the monarchy is entering a period of transition. Prince William is no longer simply preparing for kingship somewhere in the distant future. In many ways, he is already operating within that role in practice. Every engagement he attends, every decision he influences, and every alliance he strengthens helps shape the structure of the monarchy he will eventually lead. And the framework he appears to be building looks noticeably leaner. In earlier generations, the royal family functioned with a much larger working body. Numerous cousins and extended relatives carried royal patronages and represented the crown across different causes. The system was broader, with responsibilities spread across many individuals, but modern pressures have changed that reality. Public scrutiny is sharper, financial transparency is expected, public opinion moves faster than ever. Because of that, the monarchy can no longer operate with the same sprawling structure. Consolidation has become necessary. In fact, some of that consolidation has already happened. Prince Andrew stepped away from public royal duties after serious controversy connected to his association with Jeffrey Epstein and a widely criticized interview. His departure removed a long-standing figure from the working structure. Prince Harry and Meghan stepped back from senior royal roles and relocated abroad, creating another shift in how responsibilities are distributed within the institution. The result is a noticeably smaller operational core. And in an environment like that, loyalty becomes extremely valuable. Prince Edward and Sophie have quietly stepped forward to help fill some of the gaps left behind. They have done so without drama or attention-seeking, offering continuity and reliability instead. Their presence tends to reassure rather than disrupt the royal structure. Their daughter, Lady Louise, belongs to that same stable branch of the family, and by supporting her place within the Balmoral estate, Prince William appears to be reinforcing a broader pattern. The monarchy he envisions seems likely to reward steadiness over spectacle, and there is powerful symbolism in where that steadiness is anchored, even in geography. Balmoral has long served as a quiet reset point for the royal family. It is the place where tensions could cool, where serious conversations happen far from cameras, and where younger generations could experience life without constant media pressure. Across those open fields and forest paths, royal children ran freely without the glare of headlines. It is also the place where Queen Elizabeth passed away. That moment forever sealed Balmoral as sacred ground in the modern story of the monarchy. Its emotional significance deepened instantly. Now the estate carries not only history but memory tied directly to the final chapter of Elizabeth's life. Anyone who occupies space within Balmoral becomes part of that symbolic continuity. The estate is no longer just land and buildings. It represents connection to the heart of the royal family's private world. So when Queen Elizabeth anchored a piece of that estate to Lady Louise, she was not simply passing down property. She was placing a younger generation directly inside that memory. And when Prince William reportedly ensured that decision remained respected and undisturbed, he aligned himself with that legacy. That alignment matters because monarchy, at its core, is built on story. The story William appears to be shaping emphasizes discipline, emotional control, and careful modernization. The structure looks smaller, more focused, fewer central figures, but stronger unity. Compare that with earlier periods when public disagreements spilled into global headlines. Interviews revealed private family tensions. Memoirs described personal grievances. Legal battles and media coverage exposed vulnerabilities inside the institution. Those moments weakened the royal mystique. The lesson from those turbulent years seems clear. Expansion without unity creates instability. William's emerging circle appears to reflect the opposite strategy, a careful contraction toward trust. Queen Camilla's future position highlights this transition as well. As Queen Consort, her influence is tied directly to King Charles's reign. When William eventually becomes king, her title will shift to Queen Dowager. Respect will remain, but her operational role within the monarchy will likely become more limited. The center of gravity will move to the next generation, and that generational shift is already visible. Prince William and Catherine project an image built around stability, discipline, and family balance. Prince Edward and Sophie reflect the same steady approach, and Lady Louise quietly fits within that same pattern. Studying at St. Andrews, the same university where Prince William first met Catherine, quietly reflects continuity across generations. The connection may appear simple on the surface, but within royal circles, even small overlaps carry symbolic meaning. Education, friendships, and social networks often shape the long-term fabric of the monarchy. But transitions inside royal institutions rarely arrive with dramatic announcements. Monarchies almost never declare emotional reorganization out loud. Instead, those shifts appear through quieter signals, through seating arrangements at important events, through property decisions, through who appears together in public, and sometimes through who does not appear at all. Absence, in royal language, can speak louder than any speech. The story surrounding Lady Louise's Balmoral inheritance does not accuse anyone. It does not confront anyone. It simply reveals alignment. And alignment, inside a modern monarchy, has become incredibly important. Public trust fluctuates. Media attention never stops. Financial scrutiny grows stronger every year. Even historic estates like Balmoral require enormous resources to maintain. King Charles has already signaled interest in improving efficiency across royal operations. Cost awareness is now part of the monarchy's long-term survival strategy. Yet the cottage associated with Lady Louise appears secure. That security sends a quiet message. It suggests prioritization even while the broader institution becomes leaner. And that process is not destruction, it is refinement. The British monarchy is refining itself in real time, narrowing its central circle to individuals who generate stability rather than uncertainty, strengthening branches of the family that have remained aligned with the institution's tone and discipline. At just 21 years old, Lady Louise's future path remains open. She may continue building a private life largely outside royal spotlight, or she could gradually step into more public responsibilities if the institution ever requires it. That flexibility is part of her value. She is not overexposed, she carries loyalty without constant attention, and in modern royal life that combination is rare. Queen Elizabeth's final private decisions suggest she recognized that rarity. Her will remain sealed for decades. The legal documents themselves will not be available for public inspection anytime soon, but monarchy has never relied only on official paperwork to communicate meaning. It speaks through gestures. An invitation to Balmoral, a piece of jewelry passed quietly between generations, a cottage placed into careful hands. Over time, those gestures build a narrative, and the narrative emerging now feels clear. The future of the crown may depend less on the loudest personalities and more on the individuals who preserve balance within the institution. Queen Elizabeth spent more than 70 years protecting that balance with extraordinary discipline, and in what may have been one of her final private gestures, she appeared to signal who could help sustain it. Not the loudest voice, not the most powerful title, but the steadiest presence. As the monarchy moves through uncertainty and prepares for its next chapter, that steadiness could become the most valuable inheritance of all. If you found this story fascinating, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with others who follow royal history. And tell me in the comments what you think about this decision. Was Queen Elizabeth sending a quiet message about the future of the monarchy?